Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel Style by C. On today's tutorial, we'll be talking on how to make this beautiful cargo pants. So just subscribe to the channel, share to friends, give us a thumbs up. Thank you. So this is the material I'll be working with. This is a chinos material. So that's what I'm going to be using to make this combat trouser. So stay tuned, don't forget to subscribe, share to friends, and turn on your notification bell. So let's get started. So the first thing first I did was to fold my fabric into two. So my fabric is in a fold of two. I folded using my largest measurement, which is my lap measurement or my time measurement. Alright, so that's what I folded with. Okay. Now I'm going to be marking 2 inches at the bottom part of my trouser or my material, folded material. These 2 inches I marked here is for my hemming allowance. Hemming strip allowance. Okay, so that's what I have there. Then the next thing I'll go ahead to do now is to mark the full length of my trouser. So you can decide to work with the full length. It totally depends on you, how you want your trouser to be, how long you want your trouser to be is your choice. Okay, so now because I'm going to be adding a band to my trouser, I'm going to be removing 1 inch from my full length. Okay, so I'm going to be starting from -1 to 41. The full length of my short trouser is 41. So I'm going to be removing 1 inch from it. Then I'll go ahead and make a rule across. So this is what I have. Oh, sorry, it's not that clear. Let me adjust this. Okay, so now having adjusted it, it's still not clear. So what I did here is from -1 to the full length of my trouser. Now the next thing I'm going to be marking is my lap line, my hip line. So this is going to be, I'm going to be inserting my waist measurement. So I'm going to place my tape at -1 to 11 inches. 11 inches is my crotch depth. So I'll go ahead and make a rule. So this is my crotch depth. That is where my lap measurements will fall into. Then from -1 to 8 inches. The 8 inches is my hip. So I'm going to be inserting my hip measurements. Okay, so now you divide your lap measurements into two. I have 11 and a half, mine is 23. When I divide it, I have 11 and a half. I'm going to be adding extra 1 into it, making it 12 and a half inches. I'll mark it on this crotch depth line. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to also divide my hip measurements by 4. Okay, so my hip is 36, divided by 4 is going to give me 9 plus 1 inch, making it 10 inches. So this is my 10 here. Go ahead and mark it on your hip line. Also go ahead and mark it on your waistline. Then connect the dots together. So this is, so having done that, the next thing I did was to mark 1 inch from this point upwards, 1 inch from this side out, 1 inch. This is to achieve my curve here. Okay, this crotch curve. Then I went ahead to mark a rule down to the bottom of my trouser. Then this part also down. This is just to give me that shaping. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now is I'll go ahead and cut this out. Then I'm going to be using this to cut out my back piece. So now the next thing that we're going to be cutting out is our back piece. All right, so I went ahead and placed my fabric on a fold. Then I placed my front piece on top of it. Now what should I do to this part of our dress? Now I'm going to be adding 2 inches on both sides of this part. All right, I'm going to be adding 2 inches from this upper part down. So I'll be starting from this back line first. So after doing this, I'll go ahead and cut it out. But before then, I'll also go ahead at this point, mark 1 inch in, mark 1 inch up to create my curve at this area. Okay, then I'll go ahead and cut this out. Then I also cut out the sides. Okay, so this is what I have. I'll go ahead and keep this aside. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead now to do is to cut out pockets for my back trouser. Right. So now I'm going to fold my fabric into two. The width is going to be 7 inches, and on a fold is going to be 3.5 inches. 3.5 to 4 inches is okay. Okay, so I'm working is 4 inches. When I open it up, it's going to be 8 inches. Then the length is going to be 8.5 or 9 inches. So this is what I have. Go ahead and make a row across. So the width is 4 on a fold. The length is 9 inches. Now the next thing I'm going to do, from this point I'm going to be coming up by 1 inch this way. So I came up by 1 inch. Then I'm going to be slanting it to this point here. Okay, so now I'll go ahead and cut this out. So I'll use this to cut out another piece because it's going to be 2 pieces. Okay, so I'm using that to cut out another pieces. Okay, so this is what I have. When I open it up, this is what it's going to be looking like. Now I'll go ahead and open up this center point. I'm going to give it a notch by 1/2 inch, and also do the same thing for this part. The center, I'm going to open it up by 1/2 inch. Then I'm going to be working with my hemming gum. Also, I will be needing my iron too. So my hemming gum is 1 inch bold. So I'm going to trim it into two. Okay. So now I'm going to take one piece of it, place it on this area like this. Sorry, I'm blocking. Then I'm going to be folding it in. I'm going to be using the iron to hold it together. So I'll go ahead and iron it so it will lap together very well. The same thing I'm doing here, I also do it to this part of my pocket. So, so I also go ahead and fold in this edge. So having done this part, this is what it looks like. Okay, so now I'll take out another piece. Then I'm going to be using it to work on this area, this side. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use it and fold it in. So this is what I'm having. Then I also do the same thing for these upper parts. So now the next thing we'll be cutting out is our fly. Okay, the fly is what is going to be holding our zip, provisioned for our zip. Okay, so now I'm going to be working with these 9 inches. All right, then from here I'm going to mark to 7 inches, which is here. All right, then the width is going to be 2.5 inches. So I'm going to be marking from the up part to my 7 inches, 2.5. Then on getting to my 2.5, to getting to my 7 inches, I'm going to be covering it into my 9 inches. Okay. So this is what I will have. So this is my zip fly or my zip plackets, anyone you want to use. Split it open because you're going to be having two of it. So this is what I have. It was to top stitch on top of my pocket. This is the upper part of it. I've top stitched on it. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch by the side. Then I'm placing it on top of my back piece. I'm running the first stitch first, okay? So I'm going to run the first stitch. I'm getting to this particular point now. This is a sharp edge. So what you're going to do is you raise your sewing bar up, then place it this way so it will be in a curved form, and continue with your stitching. The same thing is also applicable at this center point. You also do the same thing there. Raise it up, adjust your fabric to match up, then you continue. So after creating the first stitch, this is what you have, this is what I have. Now I'm going to go ahead and run the second stitch. So the second stitch is going to be inside, so I'm going to be running a stitch closely to this first one I made. So when I'm done with it, this is what I have. This is what my back pocket looks like. Okay, so you can start your hands inside. So now to create our front side pocket, so this is what we're going to do. This is my pocket. The inches is 14 by 14, all sides are 14 inches. All right, so place it on top of the front piece. Okay, the side, this is how you place it. Then go ahead and mark on this upper area, go ahead and mark 2.5 inches. So now if you watch closely, you see that the pocket itself is coming out a little because of this hip sizing. Okay, the hip and waist sizing, so that is totally fine, don't worry. So place your tape starting from your main fabric, the main trouser piece, the front piece. That's where you're going to start your 2.5 from. You mark your 2.5 here. The next thing you're going to go ahead and do is mark from the up part of your trouser, the waist area, mark 7.5 inches. So this is your 7.5 inches. Okay, now go ahead and use a rule, though you can still do free hand cutting, which is totally fine. So from this up part, connect it to your 7.5. That is 2.5 to your 7.5 inches. This is what you will have. Okay, now go ahead and make a notch on this 2.5 and on this 7.5. So a slight notch, maybe quarter inch deep or half inch deep, but not too deep. So this is what you have. Then go ahead and run a stitch on it. All right, so this is what you're going to do now. We're done stitching on it. Okay, so you open it up this way. This is what you now have. Then the next thing to do is just carry it this way, placing it in this form. Okay, so this is what we have. Now this is our pocket opening. This is where you can fix your hand. So go ahead and run a stitch, a top stitch on it. Okay, just to hold the pocket and the trouser piece together. This way, you're not touching this part. You're only running a stitch on this one. Go ahead and run a stitch on it. So having done that, the next thing I went ahead to do was to close inside of my pocket. I just went ahead and run a stitch on it. Okay, nothing serious is happening there, just run a stitch on it. So when you flip it over, this is what your pocket is giving. Okay, this is what you have. So what next should you do? Go ahead and join the back of your trouser to the front piece of your trouser. So this is the back of my trouser now. Right sides facing each other. Then go ahead and run a stitch on them. So at this point now, I want to fix the side pockets that is going to be at the new area. So what you're going to do is you place a tape at your start point, at your waistline, then mark 18 inches. At 18 inches, that is where your pocket is going to be. That's where it's going to start. Alright? Then this is the pocket I've already cut out. Okay, so let's check how many inches we have here. So we have 12. I think 12 by 10 inches. Yes, we have 12 by 10 inches. So go ahead and fold the edges in. Okay, so for this upper area now, I'm going to run a stitch on top of it. I'm going to top stitch on it. Then I'm going to be placing it, get the midpoint of it, place it at the center. Then go ahead and run a stitch on from this point down to the bottom part of it. So that's what I'm going to do now. So now I'm going ahead to place, this is the center of my pocket. I went ahead to place it on top of, this is my 18 inches. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pin it down. So this is what I have. Now go ahead over to your sewing machine and run a stitch on it. Doing the first stitch, which is this one, I also went ahead and made another stitch beside it. Okay, just to give it that stylish look. Next thing I'm going to be working on is this pocket cover. So this is what I have. Okay, the width is 3 inches on a fold. You can decide to do 2.5 or 2 inches, or even more than, depends on how bold you want it to be. So what I'm going to do first now is I'm going to run a stitch on here to close it, but before then I'm going to fold in a little inch this way, the other way. Okay, so let's do it. I'm going to have to run a stitch on it, but I folded it in a little. Okay, so when I turn it out, it's to give me that perfect stuff I'm looking for. So this is what I have after turning it out. So I went ahead to fold in this place a little because I'm going to be running a top stitch on it. So now go ahead and top stitch round these areas. Okay, you can decide to make it a double stitch, or you can decide to leave it as a single stitch. I have for my pocket cover. Now I'm going to be attaching it to the upper part of my pocket. So this is what I'm doing. I've placed it on top, okay, close to my 18 inches, close to the start point of my pocket. All right, so now go ahead and top stitch on it. So when I'm done with it, this is what I have. This is what the finishing looks like. All right, so this is what we have for our pocket cover and our side pockets. So now before I start inserting my fly is, I didn't cut out 1 inch below on my front piece when I was drafting this, so I'm going to do it now. So from the center point of my front piece, I marked 1 inch below, then connect it to the side piece. The same thing for this end. So I'll go ahead and cut it out. Having cut it out, this is what I have. This is what it looks like. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead with the joining of my zip and the zip plackets. So this is my zip placket. This is for one piece, and this is the other one. So first thing first is I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch on it. This side I'm going to join it to my trouser. The same thing. So I'm going to join it to my trouser first. So now I'm going ahead to join the fly plackets, my zip plackets. Alright, so this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to be working on is this area. So I'll go ahead and join the two pieces of my front together first. I've went ahead to place the right side to right side facing each other. So now from here I'm going to run a stitch and close up this area. I'm not touching this part. This is the area I'm going to close up. This is where this joining starts from. Okay, I didn't start from this point. I started from here. When you place your zip, you know where your zip is ending. You start from just run a stitch on it. So go ahead and open it up. When I open it up, this is what I have. Now this side is open. This side is going to be the cover. Alright,
or you can decide to use this side as the cover. Whichever one you want to do is totally fine. Okay, what I'm going to do is, or the next thing I did was to place my zip on top of, I place it on top of this side. Okay, so now go ahead and run a stitch on it. That's what you're going to do first. Attaching my zip, I now went ahead to top stitch. I'm going to now run a top stitch on top of here. So I'm done top stitching on it. Now I'm going to be covering it up using this other side of my trouser. So go ahead and place it on top of it as a cover. So now I'm gonna head to place it on it. So this is the second one, cover. Then now you're going to run a top stitch on it. Okay, then coming to this side, you make that curve. All right, now don't forget that this is a zip and you also need to stitch on it while making your top stitch. So go ahead and make it form a curve in here. The placket looks like. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do now, placket, the next thing I went ahead to shape is the upper part of my waist. All right, and this crotch area of the back. So now this is the center of my waist, the side of my waist. So from here you mark your waist measurements, whatever you have. Like mine is 7, this is where I stopped. So now from here I'm going to be using 1 inch. Coming to this area, I'm going to be slanting it inside until it gets to this point. So I'll go ahead and run a stitch on it. That is the 2 back pieces together. My back, the upper part of my back is together. That's the waist and the crotch line together, or crotch depth together. The next thing I'm going to go ahead to do now is to close up the side seam of my trouser. So before then, I went ahead and closed up the bottom parts, hem the bottom part, or hem the edges of my trouser. Okay, so now go ahead and shape your trouser. Now the next thing I'm going to be inserting is the band. All right, but first of all I'm going to measure around my waist what I have. That's to enable me know the inches I'm cutting out. Then the boldness is going to be 2.5 on a fold. Okay, you can decide to work with 2 inches, but preferably 2.5 inches is perfect. It's okay for your band. Unless you want a bigger band, you can go for 3 inches. All right, and I'm going to go in and fold this end. This is the edges, okay, the tip. So I'm going to be folding the 2 of them together. I'm going to run a stitch on it, then turn it out. I have, so these 2 edges inside are going to go in. So I'll go ahead and give it an iron. I'm going to iron it properly. So at this point now, I decided not to put a belt holder since the trouser is my perfect waist size. So I'm not putting a belt holder to it. All right, done ironing it. All right, so now I'll go ahead and attach it to my trouser. I'm going to place it. I'm going to place my main piece in between my band placket. All right, in between my band. Then I'm going to go ahead and top stitch on it.